Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show. Hope you're having a great day as we come to you from the Citizens Bank studio. And, I enjoyed that conversation with the Nature Conservancy. They're doing great work all across the state of Mississippi. And, of course, we're thinking about our friends over in Florida and Georgia and other states have been impacted by Hurricane Helene, and we continue to watch that situation to see what we can do to help them. And they're in our thoughts and prayers, that is for sure. I said, let's shift gears now and move over to my friend Hunter Dawkins, who is the owner and publisher of the Gazebo Gazette in coastal Mississippi. He's also a contributor to SuperTalk Mississippi News and someone I love checking in with from time to time. How you doing, my friend?
Doing well, Ricky. I use that, and I'll have to talk to JT about it if it's enough now of me being a contributor where I need to get a position title now, since I'm doing a pretty good amount of writing for you guys.
Well, I think it's awesome that you're doing that, and it helps bring great attention to your efforts at the Gazebo Gazette. And it's being in the newspaper business has never been easy. No, there was a time when ads were coming in over the transom and all of that. But the truth is, to survive in the world that you're in today, this very hyper local world that you're in today, and have readers who really care about what's happening local, you have to serve their needs. And when you do, you can do well, and you've really kind of stood the test of time, and I congratulate you for that, Hunter.
I thank you very much, sir. And it's definitely difficult, coming to terms with people's budgets and things like that, because I have my own budget, of course, as you know, and it's this time of year is obviously a tough time because trying to collect checks and doing all this and all that before the holidays as they come about, but it's as long as you keep moving forward, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, it's a tough world, as I know well, especially when you own a small newspaper like you do, who has a great online presence, I might add. But I often refer to you like I do with Kyle. You're a jack of all trades. You have to be a CEO of a company. You have those fiduciary responsibilities. Then you have for a First Amendment obligation. You're trying to provide the information for citizens in your corner of the world that they can then decide for themselves how they want to respond to certain city challenges, et cetera. You've got you play a role in the community, to help build a better community. So you have to hit on a lot of cylinders to be a publisher in this world, don't you?
I definitely thank you for comparing me to Kyle, because he's definitely a jack of all trades. With all the different things that he does, not only on the Mississippi Gulf Coast level, but also with the Superdome and the Saints and the Pelicans and all the rest. It's definitely interesting. But of course, being having the relationships, building the local relationships that I have during my time, and a lot of it had to do with my parents. My parents. I'm a byproduct of them, as successful public servants as they have been. It's really helped, garnish my career.
Well, your dad is a friend, and your mother have worked with her closely when she was in her political life. Always someone who had such a strong sense of the community, had a strong sense of our responsibility as stewards of the environment and this wonderful place, this place we call paradise. Had tremendous respect for her, but you can't go wrong when you've got good genes and good guidance in your life, can you?
That's right. I mean, they definitely have set a foundation, and something that I'm trying to do with my own child. And even though he lives a distance away over in Arizona, it's something, trying to communicate and trying to make sure we move forward.
Yeah. Well, you're an inspiration. Look, there's a lot we can talk about, and we should point out we're actually recording this show before the Saints play Sunday, and it's going to not play until Tuesday. It's just kind of where it fell in the rotation in terms of getting our calendars together. But you follow the Saints closely, and I look back on the Philadelphia game, not with a lot of not a lot of maybe some concerns, but I'm not as concerned as you might hear on the social media. I'm a little bit more concerned about some of the injuries that cropped up. Of course, Eric McCoy needing surgery. He'll be out 4 to 8 weeks. Taysom Hill, we're lucky that he missed one game. Maybe I hope we're looking back on the game with the Falcons and Taysom played, because if he played, he's a game changer. He had a bruised lung, man. That's an interesting injury in the football world. But this is the time of year when injuries start to stack up, and we have some issues with depth, like on the offensive line and so on. It gives you a little bit of concern, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Ricky, me being an old offensive line coach and having my state championship ring right next to me wherever I go. But that being said, being an offensive line coach, you can see that from the injury reports and having the depth. But that's also a lot of needed help from our recruiting when we scout with, our director of scouting, Jeff Ireland, who's done a pretty fantastic job with the Saints organization on draft picks and on getting guys in training camp that can solidify us, if I said the Saints organization, as if they need some kind of replacement, especially with McCoy. But it's hard to replace those guys, and especially with the Taysom, who's a specialist in many different fields, not only on offense, not only special teams, different positions for different avenues. But, in my thoughts of the schemes, there needs to be sort of a development from the team. I've always thought when I was coaching, obviously come from the coaching world, Ricky, that you need to have a plan A and a plan B. I'm not saying the Saints don't have that, but what I'm saying is you need to be prepared for those case situations in case they do happen. And unfortunately, with the money and the things that go in the NFL, you don't have a lot of that very much nowadays. So.
Yeah, if I'd have said what's the worst case scenarios, I would have said, as far as the offensive line was concerned, I would have said losing McCoy, Pro Bowl center Fuaga. Now here's you got a rookie over on the left side. He's doing so good. Those would have been tough. Any of the starting offensive linemen would have been tough. But Eric McCoy,
Ruiz, the right guard, who is almost at a Pro Bowl level. I'm not necessarily sure what his input is, but he had to leave during the middle of the game too after McCoy. Yeah. So that's obviously a tough struggle.
So let's talk a little bit. So we're looking. Okay, we're recording this before the Saints play, but I'll make you some. I may be totally wrong about this, but I'll make you some predictions. My prediction is that if they can fill the gaps on the offensive line, and if Taysom Hill comes back and plays, that they'll be able to open the playbook back up again. We'll see a little bit more of what we saw in the first 2 weeks. If you look back on the Philadelphia game, except for that one long run that Philadelphia had, the Saints defense did not play a bad game. I mean, they bent, but they didn't break, and they held the points down. If the offense could have just played, I think they were concerned about not having Taysom Hill, but then when they lost McCoy, it really changed the scheme in terms of pass protection and so on. And they just couldn't get it going. But at the same time, buddy, they played a tough defense. I mean, Philadelphia is a really good team. Let's remind ourselves they were in the Super Bowl last year. So and we almost beat them. We could 2 years ago. Yeah. So the reality is we almost beat them, and we could have beat them. It was so close. I think we match up better with Atlanta.
I would agree with you from the line perspective, Ricky. I would certainly agree with you because, of course, the Eagles, their first round draft picks for the last 2 or 3 years have all been Georgia defensive linemen, and if you've seen in Georgia in the past 5 years, has been pretty successful, at least from the college rates. But that being said, we match up better in the line perspective against Atlanta. And because the Eagles had Saquon Barkley, who is one of the best running backs in the league, and he just kept pounding on from the defensive standpoint for the Saints. You're going to have a lot more evenly matched game. But then again, as we all start with the game of football, is always starts from the quarterback scenario. What type of quarterback is going to show up from Derek Carr's perspective, but also from Kirk Cousins' perspective? Kirk Cousins, who has been pretty successful against the Saints in his past history. That's not saying one thing leads to the other, but that is saying that, the Saints have to be able to manage the game schemes based on that.
We'll get your prediction on the other side, and we'll continue to chat a little bit about Southern Miss and what's happening there. And I want to talk about the division of Pass Christian as it relates to the seawall and some other topics that are out there as we continue after this break with my friend Hunter Dawkins. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. I have Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette, a SuperTalk Mississippi News contributor. And remember now, we're recording this show just because of how it fell on the calendar and being able to get our calendars in sync before the Saints play. But I made a prediction. I'll make the prediction that the Saints are going to win a relatively close game. And I may be totally wrong about that by now. By the time this show airs, that game will have been behind us. But what do you think we're going to be looking back on when this show airs, Hunter?
Well, Ricky, I certainly agree with you from the perspective of if everything goes how the plan is for the New Orleans Saints organization, then the Saints should be successful coming out at the end, because their games that have been close have always ended in favor. Now, when they play Atlanta, obviously big rivalry game, if Atlanta gets up on them, it's pretty rough for the organization to be able to come back. But if the Saints keep it close and they keep things within the at least in the hash lines, I think it'll be a good game, and I think the Saints will be successful.
Well, let's hope that we're right, and people are saying, well, they're pretty smart guys, or they might be listening and thinking, man, they sure did miss it. I hope they're not saying they missed it. Southern Miss has really struggled. I thought they would do better this year. It looked like they were picking up some good players. I worry about a team like Southern Miss in the age of NIL and the transfer portal and all that. How do they build a winning program?
The biggest problem for Southern, Ricky, and I know this being as you being an alum of Southern, and you're probably wondering this whenever you get the opportunity to go to games, how do they match up in resources? It's not so much the recruiting. Will Hall and the staff have done a great job recruiting, as Will has pointed out to me in the media days, and putting out that, we've been in the top 3 recruiting classes in the last, 4 or 5 years. Yeah, okay, for the Sun Belt. That I would agree with that. But getting those resources to keep the kids, even though according to Will Hall, the retention has been successful, and I would certainly agree with that. But from the something when you notice when you go to Southern Miss facilities versus when you go to a number of these other Sun Belt facilities, even like, let's take example, South Alabama, right down the street to Mobile. It's about the same distance down here to Mobile as it is to Hattiesburg. And what do they offer? They don't necessarily offer a better, historical program, but they offer a pretty quality education along with the amenities and the resources. That's got to be a step in the right direction. For Jeremy McClain and for Joe Paul, the president, they have to make a little bit of different moves. I'm not saying that the money is not there. Maybe it's not. Maybe they need to work more to the collective, the foundation and things as such. But they have to provide more resources to be able to get kids interested, because as you know, and as both Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss's coach, and Jeff Lebby, State's coach, have identified that some of the most successful kids in the country come from the state of Mississippi. Why are those kids not just jumping over the joy to be Southern Miss athletes? And they're looking and seeing what they've got versus what they can get. And that's the first step in the right direction, in my opinion, for Will Hall and staff.
Yeah, I have a cousin who is a coach in baseball at UAB. And he said, and he played pros and he coached in the pros. And he said it's very frustrating because as soon as a baseball player gets to near 300 or 300 batting average, the phone starts ringing. So sure. they're kind of in this position where they're developing player to be able to move to bigger programs in the collegiate level. And it's just very frustrating. It's hard to build a team over the course of several years because of that. I think football is the same way. That it just how do you ultimately compete in this new world that we're in?
Well, and there's an offering of, I know that Will talked about, there needed to be a division between the top four, the group of 4 teams, and the group of 5 teams also. But I don't really see it that way, Ricky. I see it from the level of, okay, if you want to compete, it's got to be, there has to be resources. There has to be effective foundation. USM has never been bad about donating money. Don't get me wrong, Ricky, and I know you know this too as well. And as my mom was very much a participant in the alumni foundation, and they definitely have got some good collective money and things as such, but there needs to be a resource. There needs to be something that from the athletic program, which they have got a great history of having very successful athletic programs. But,
Well, listen, we didn't get a chance to talk about the Pass Richard and Seawall. We'll do that the next time we come back together again. But it's been a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend.
Hey, it's always great to talk to you, and I appreciate you, Ricky and Kyle. You guys, y'all do a great job, and I thank y'all and keep going forward with the stuff.
Well, thanks for all you do. This has been Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette. Listen, have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.